Hare Krishna. Can you hear?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances of Krishna Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to our evening Bhagavad Gita circle reading program. Today we continue with chapter 18, verse 58. Almost towards the end of the chapter, as the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the conclusion chapter. So please, without further delay, we will start right into the class and try to get some questions answered to have a nice discussion. And it's all yours. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschathyadi Sajarini. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sidvaita Gadadha Sivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jai, Hare Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Text 58. Matjita Savadurgani Mat Prasada Starishyati Atachetvam Ahankaran Nashtosyasi Vinangshatsi. Translation by Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A person in full Krishna consciousness is not unduly anxious about executing the duties of his existence. The foolish cannot understand this great freedom from all anxiety. For one who acts in Krishna consciousness, Lord Krishna becomes the most intimate friend. He always looks after his friend's comfort, and he gives himself to his friend, who is so devotedly engaged, working 24 hours a day to please the Lord. Therefore, no one should be carried away by the false ego of the bodily concept of life. One should not falsely think himself independent to the laws of material nature or free to act. He is already under strict material laws. But as soon as he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is liberated, free from the material perplexities. One should note very carefully that one who is not active in Krishna consciousness is losing himself in the material whirlpool in the ocean of birth and death. No conditioned soul actually knows what is to be done and what is not to be done. But a person who acts in Krishna consciousness is free to act because everything is prompted by Krishna from within and confirmed by the spiritual master. Text 59. Yad ahankaram ashritya nayotsya iti manyase metesha vyavasasyaste prakritistvam niyokshati. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. If you do not act according to my direction and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you will have to be engaged in warfare. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Arjuna was a military man, born of the nature of a Kshatriya. Therefore, his natural duty was to fight. But due to false ego, he was fearing that by killing his teacher, grandfather, and friends, he would incur sinful reactions. Actually, he was considering himself master of his actions, as if he were directing the good and bad results of such work. He forgot that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present there, instructing him to fight. That is the forgetfulness of the conditioned soul. The Supreme Personality gives directions as to what is good and what is bad, and one simply has to act in Krishna consciousness to attain the perfection of life. No one can ascertain his destiny as the Supreme Lord can. Therefore, the best course is to take direction from the Supreme Lord and act. No one should neglect the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the order of the Spiritual Master, who is the representative of God. One should act unhesitatingly to execute the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That will keep one safe under all circumstances. Text 60. Swabhavadena konteya nevadasvena karmana kartum nischasi mohat karishyasya vashopitat. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction. But compelled by the work born of your own nature, you will act all the same. Osana Kunti. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. If one refuses to act under the direction of the Supreme Lord, then he is compelled to act by the modes in which he is situated. Everyone is under the spell of a particular combination of the modes of nature and is acting in that way. But anyone who voluntarily engages himself under the direction of the Supreme Lord becomes glorious. Text 61. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridesya junatishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudani mayaya. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Arjuna was not the supreme knower, and his decision to fight or not to fight was confined to his limited discretion. Lord Krishna instructed that the individual is not all in all. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, or He Himself, Krishna, as the localized Supersoul, sits in the heart directing the living being. After changing bodies, the living entity forgets his past deeds, but the Supersoul, as the knower of the past, present, and future, remains the witness of all his activities. Therefore, all the activities of living entities are directed by this Supersoul. The living entity gets what he deserves and is carried by the material body, which is created in the material energy under the direction of the Supersoul. As soon as a living entity is placed in a particular type of body, he has to work under the spell of that bodily situation. A person seated in a high-speed motor car goes faster than one seated in a slower car, though the living entities, the drivers, may be the same. Similarly, by the order of the Supreme Soul, material nature fashions a particular type of body to a particular type of living entity so that he may work according to his past desires. The living entity is not independent. One should not think himself independent of the Supreme. Is to surrender, and that is the injunction of the next verse. Text 62. Tam eva sharanam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prapsyasi shashvatam. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. O son of Bharat, surrender unto him utterly. By his grace, you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme and eternal abode. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A living entity should therefore surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart, and that would relieve him from all kinds of miseries of this material existence. By such surrender, not only will one be released from all miseries in this life, but at the end, he will reach the Supreme God. The transcendental world is described in the Vedic literature, Rig Veda 1.22.20, as Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam. Since all of creation is the kingdom of God, everything material is actually spiritual, but Paramam Padam specifically refers to the eternal abode, which is called the spiritual sky or Vaikuntha. In the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is stated, Sarvasya Chaham Hridishani Vishta, Bhagavad Gita 15:15. The Lord is seated in everyone's heart. So this recommendation that one should surrender unto the supreme, unto the super soul sitting within means that one should surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Krishna has already been accepted by Arjuna as the Supreme. He was accepted in the 10th chapter as Brahma Param Dharma. Arjuna has accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the supreme abode of all living entities, not only because of his personal experience, but also because of the evidence of great authorities like Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasa. Text 63. Iti te jnanam akyatam guhyat guhyataram maya vemrish takuru. Translation by Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Thus, I've explained to you knowledge still more confidential. Deliberate on this fully, and then do what you wish to do. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord has already explained to Arjuna the knowledge of Brahma Bhuta, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 30, Text 20. One who is in the Brahma Bhuta condition is joyful. He never laments, nor does he desire anything. That is due to confidential knowledge. Krishna also discloses knowledge of the Super Soul. That is also Brahman knowledge, but it is superior. Here the word Lachesa Yasti Chasi Tatakuru, as you like, you may act, indicate that God does not interfere with the little independence of the living entity. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has explained in all respects how one can elevate his living condition. The best advice imparted to Arjuna is to surrender to the super soul seated within his heart. By right discrimination, one should agree to act according to the order of the Supersoul. That will help one become situated constantly in Krishna consciousness, the highest perfectional stage of human life. Arjuna is being directly ordered by the personality of Godhead to fight. Surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is in the best interests of the living entities. It is not for the interest of the Supreme. Before surrendering, one is free to deliberate on this subject as far as the intelligence goes. That is the best way to accept the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such instruction comes also through the spiritual master, the bona fide representative of Krishna. Text 64. Sarva guhyatamam bhuya shrinume paramam vacha ishtosi medritamiti tato vakshyamite hitam. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Because you're my very dear friend, I'm speaking to you my supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge of all. Hear this from me, for it is for your benefit. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord has given Arjuna knowledge that is confidential, knowledge of Brahman, and still more confidential, knowledge of a super soul in everyone's heart. The same instruction is repeated here to stress the essence of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. This essence is not understood by a common man, but by one who is actually very dear to Krishna, a pure devotee of Krishna. This is the most important instruction in all Vedic literature. What Krishna is saying in this connection is the most essential part of knowledge, and it should be carried out not only by Arjuna, but by all living entities. Text 65. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam eveshyasi satyam te pratijane priyosimi. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Always think of me, become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you're my very dear friend. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The most confidential part of knowledge is that one should become a pure devotee of Krishna and always think of him and act for him. One should not become an official meditator. One life should be so molded that one will always have a chance to think of Krishna. One should always act in such a way that all his daily activities are in connection with Krishna. He should arrange his life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours, he cannot but think of Krishna. And the Lord's promise is that anyone who is in such pure Krishna consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna, where he will be engaged in the association of Krishna face to face. The most confidential part of knowledge is spoken to Arjuna because he is the dear friend of Krishna. Everyone who follows the path of Arjuna can become a dear friend to Krishna and obtain the same perfection as Arjuna. These words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna, the very form with two hands carrying a flute, the bluish boy with a beautiful face and peacock feathers in his hair. There are descriptions of Krishna found in the Brahma Samhita and other literatures. One should fix his mind on this original form of Godhead, Krishna. One should not even divert his attention to other forms of the Lord. The Lord has multi-forms as Vishnu, Narayan, Rama, Varaha, etc. But the devotee should concentrate his mind on the form that was present before Arjuna. concentration of the mind on the form of Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of knowledge. And this is disclosed to Arjuna because Arjuna is the most dear friend of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much for reading these verses, and I hope that our connection stays because it's been a little testing time this whole day with this internet situation. I want to ask a question, and if you could just shed some light. I may have heard this before, but then again, I have the things I don't remember. But it's really nice how Srila Prabhupada mentioned here that one should meditate on the original form of Godhead with the form of the two hands carrying a flute, the bluish boy. And then he says there are many forms, but a devotee should concentrate his mind on the form that was present before Krishna, before Arjuna. So I have a question, because there are situations where, some devotees, they say, I'm a Ram Bhakta, I'm a Nrsingadev Bhakta, I'm a this Bhakta, that Bhakta. So does that mean that it's, that they are meditating on that form, or does that, or is it right? Is it wrong?
To meditate on other forms of Krishna?
Yeah, because it's
other forms of the Lord, other expansions of the Lord.
Yes.
Srila Prabhupada is giving us the highest. In all his teachings, he gives us the highest. There is the spiritual world, for example, before I do this. And Srila Prabhupada says there are Vaikuntha planets. Lord Narayan, for each planet is there. Your spiritual body, you can have a 400 form like him. You can worship him in awe and reverence. This is the spiritual world. And the spiritual world has everything that you need. But as he mentions that, he says, but plan to go to Goloka Vrindavan. And he tells about that particular planet that is farthermost, and where the relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is more variegated than in any of the Vaikuntha planets. So Srila Prabhupada has made it possible for us, with fewer rounds of chanting japa, to go to get the highest that could be obtained by a devotee. Srila Prabhupada also said here that we should not divert our attention to other forms of the Lord, because those are expansions of the Lord, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its original form, two-handed form, was the one that was with Arjuna, present before Arjuna. So he is the most complete. There's complete, there's more complete, and there's most complete. In spiritual life, you can. In non-devotee life, you can't, have explanation. Bring out the point that Krishna is the sum total of all of the incarnations. Therefore, it makes more, or one gets everything when they surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Remember, there are different properties also, that Krishna has all properties 10%, but the Vishnu forms have 93%. Well, the 93% is not 100%. The 64 qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu forms have 60. So if Srila Prabhupada says, go to Krishna, surrender to Krishna, Krishna is saying, this is the most confidential part. The confidential part was the Brahman realization. The more confidential part was the Paramatma realization. And the most confidential part is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, two-handed form. So Srila Prabhupada doesn't want to sell us short. He wants us to go for the highest there is, even if a person goes to the parts that are expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yes, there is peace of mind, there is happiness, but it's not as great as being able to relate to Krishna in all the 5 rasas, and that occurs in Goloka Vrindavan only. So he's giving us the highest. Not that the others are wrong, no.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just remembering, thinking about that part, but thank you for clarifying that point. Thank you so much. Another question that I have is on this question, on this verse, and you know, where it's the Krishna is saying, thus I've explained to you the knowledge still more confidential, deliberate on this fully. I'm assuming the word deliberate means meditate or contemplate or think about it. I'm thinking.
That's 1863.
Yes.
1863. Thus I've explained to you knowledge still more confidential. Deliberate on this fully and do what you wish to do. In other words, think critically on this. Think critically on this, and Sri Prabhupada says, as you like, you may act. Think deliberate, a little bit on this, is think very analytically, very seriously, and then do what you wish to do, because Sri Prabhupada explains, and we know this, that the Lord does not interfere with our independence. The living entity is allowed to do what they want to do. If you do what Krishna asks, then you go to Krishna. If you don't do what Krishna asks, you still will be under the energy of the Lord, but the inferior energy, more to the material nature, and then the modes will have an effect on you. So Krishna explained all of that, and he said, if you do not do what I tell you, then you're going to be lost. So, and then finally he says, just surrender. Become my devotee, offer homage to me, and offer obeisances to me, and then serve me. And then you come to me. And Sri Prabhupada says, there's no point being in other expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead when we have the opportunity to relate to Krishna himself. So it's best to go through the instructions of how to relate to Krishna through the devotees, through senior devotees, through the spiritual master, and follow exactly what we are asked to do, and do your very best to keep repeating what needs to be repeated, and gradually be happy in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Thank you for shedding light on that, because, and I remember this question was asked by us, I think a few years ago. One devotee asked, if, why is it that Krishna knows that we came back here and he wants us back, then why does he give us free will?
There is free will.
Yeah.
There is free will even in the spiritual world. You cannot, Krishna, the simple answer to that is Krishna is not going to force anybody to love him. You're going to have to love him on your own. So even pure devotees are given a chance to either love him or not love him, but pure devotees know better. They do everything for the Lord, especially the gopis of Vrindavan. Not only do they think about Lord, everything in every cell of their body is for service to Krishna. And that's why they're in the best situation as far as servants of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they are fully in love with them. All the 7 different ways of Krishna Prema they exhibit. The 8th one is for Radharani only. So that's why I said 7 different ways.
Can you quickly go through the 7? Just kind of briefly.
Okay, there's Sneha, there's Mana, there's Pranaya, there's Raga, there's Anuraga, there's Bhava, and there's Mahabhava. First of all, I had to pick my mind, make sure I can remember all 7. So this is when somebody comes to the situation of Krishna Prema. So the heart becomes very soft in Sneha level. And it's like it also gets illuminated. And now anything that they hear about Krishna, that they want that sense to be able to, they want to have that sense 1,000,000 times. Like they want to hear about Krishna, they wish they had 1,000,000 ears when they see Krishna, they had a million eyes to see Krishna. That's the Sneha form. Mana is when Krishna takes off and they are missing him. And the gopis usually they will sulk because Mana, Krishna when he left Vrindavan and went to Mathura, so they got into that Mana form. Those in Vrindavan. Pranaya, the way Govinda Maharaj explained it is that in Mana form, a person is like united with Krishna in so many ways. And one example that they gave was Krishna has a bluish-black color. And so Radharani wears blue saris because of the blue Krishna. Yeah. Raga is very, well, I'll describe it rather than talk about what it is. I mean, what's it like. I'll just describe it fully. Raga is when, especially for the gopis, they're so much in love with Krishna that they don't really care what people think of them, even if they break the rules, etiquette to come meet him. People are accused, rather, everybody goes to the well to get water in groups of gopis, and you go there by yourself because you just want to meet Krishna there, and so, and it is not proper. Radha says, you can accuse me all you want. I will wear all your accusations like a garland around my neck. I couldn't care less. I'll still go. Yeah. Anuraga is when you hear things about Krishna and you hear them again. It's like newer and newer and newer and newer. Yeah. So Bhava, Govinda Maharaj said that for Bhava, you can't really describe how the person feels inside, but the symptoms of somebody in Bhava, that's what gives the person away that they have that Bhava, because they will have tears, their hairs will stand on end, and they will be shivering, fainting, and all of that. There are 8 different ways, but I don't remember all 8 of them. But it's Nishishastika. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, yeah. And the hair stands on end, and so on. And so that's the Bhava. Mahabhav, a person is in a stunned situation. We just talked about Bhava. We don't know what the feeling is, but we see the external symptoms in the person. Mahabhav, the person is so much in love with Krishna that, oh, and by the way, I didn't say this, from Sneha and all that goes, it gets, the love gets deeper and deeper. So every one that I described is actually deeper, okay? So we have Mahabhav, which is the 7th one. Mahabhav, the person tries to mention, even speak, or any mantra, and the mantra that's common to us is Hare Krishna mantra. So we can speak, Hare Krishna mantra is also from the spiritual world, so they do use it. If they speak Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, they were so much in love with Krishna that they will begin to feel the symptoms as was described in the Bhava form. And so a Mahabhava person literally stutters and sing in trying to speak, like Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, like that. It's Mahabhava. So those are the 7. And Srimati Radharani has all of them. And all of them together are called Madanakya Mahabhav. That's the 8th one. But that's the 8th one is a combination of all 7. No Gopi has all 7, only Radharani. And one more person. And it's not too hard. One more person as a male who has all of it. Just one guess. Who would that be? That would be Lord Chaitanya. He came in the mood of Radharani. So yeah, so Lord Chaitanya also exhibited Madanakya Mahabhav. Govinda Maharaj said that's the whole thing, but he said he stole it. He said, "Oh, Chaitanya he stole it from Radharani. He stole it." So, people said, "But he's coming to the material." No, he stole it. He stole It's a whole pastime, his own, mood is describing. Yeah, but only Radharani has all 7 forms of expressions of Krishna prema, and so they say it belongs to Radharani. So Chaitanya came with that same mood. We are not pure enough to say that he stole, but but then he's in a different mood. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for shedding light on that. If there are no, it's just that the 3 of us. So if there's no questions from any of us, thank you so much for reading this. Then we continue to finish it up. And it looks like we will be able to finish this chapter by this week. And then next week, we will start Srila Prabhupada's giving Bhagavad Gita classes. I'm looking forward to that one too. So please do join us on. Shorab, you have a question, Shorab? Go ahead.
No, I just was going to say
It's
Hari
okay. I
Bol.
just didn't want you to feel like I ignored you. That's all. So we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning's class will be by Balabhadra Prabhu. Until then, Vanchakrapatibhyascha, Kripasundaveva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.